Hey, good morning. I'm Patricia Murphy. It's Tuesday. This is Seattle Now. Most everybody's got to go to work, but not everybody works the same way in the office. Noises, chatter, even fluorescent lights can make it difficult to be productive. In a minute, we'll talk with Kay Sargent of architecture firm HOK. The firm redesigned their office space with an eye towards accommodating neurodiversity. More on that in a minute, but first, let's get you caught up. Observers who regularly monitor deportation flight activity in and out of King County Regional Airport are calling for more transparency. A coalition of immigrant justice organizations, including the University of Washington Center for Human Rights, will release a year and a half of flight data today. They say it outlines human rights violations and spotlights a lack of transparency regarding King County Airport's relationship with immigration and customs enforcement. The press conference starts at 10. If you've got outdoor plans this week, make sure you're prepared for the heat. We're trading Monday's balmy mid-70s for mid-80s starting today. The National Weather Service says expect temperatures to graze 90 by Wednesday with overnight lows in the 60s. Temperatures will be back into the 70s by the weekend. And after seeing Cal Raleigh in last night's MLB Home Run Derby, you can see him and three other Mariners in tonight's MLB All-Star Game at 5 p.m. Pitchers Brian Wu, Andres Munoz, as well as outfielder Randy Arozarena are set to join the festivities. Arozarena replaces outfielder Julio Rodriguez, who announced last week he's dropping out of the All-Star Game to focus on resting and preparing for the second half of the season. Check back for more headlines on tonight's episode of Seattle Now. What kind of environment helps you do your best work? It feels like debates around this haven't stopped since the pandemic. For neurodivergent people, this question has become more pressing. Awareness around neurodivergence, which encompasses conditions like autism and ADHD, has increased in recent years, and with that awareness are calls for accommodations, one of them being the physical environment at work. HOK, a global design and architecture firm, has spent years researching how to design spaces tailored for a more neurodiverse workforce. They redesigned their downtown Seattle office to see how their employees would respond to the accommodations. So far, the results have been positive. Kay Sargent led the efforts at HOK. She's here now to talk about them. Hey, Kay, thanks for taking the time.
Happy to join.
So, what first made you interested in neurodiverse workspaces? What's the origin story here?
Well, the origin story is actually a little embarrassing, specifically because I am a mother of 5, and 2 of my children have been diagnosed as being neurodivergent. But it really started 8 years ago when we were in a meeting with a client. And at the end of the meeting, as we were walking out of the room, he just kind of casually said, "By the way, how do you design space for someone that's ADHD?" And I had an okay answer, but not an amazing answer. And we like to have great answers for our clients. So we started to do some research. And what we found was just this huge gap in information about how to design the built environment to really support people with cognitive challenges and sensory processing issues.
All right, well, before we move forward, let's talk about what we're talking about here. The term neurodivergence kind of thrown around. What does it mean? Who are we talking about here?
Yeah, so we're talking about a natural occurring difference, not a deficit, of how people think, process, and just kind of interact and or feel with the built environment and with others. It can be ADHD, it can be people uh, on the autistic spectrum, it can be dyslexic, a whole variety of conditions that really impact how people function and think.
Okay, you had a plan. How did you go about trying to understand what being neurodiverse looked like in the workplace? What did you do?
A ton of reading, a ton of interviews, a ton of engagement, a ton of research. Literally, for the better part of, I think, the last 8 or 9 years, we have really dove into this topic. We've done multiple research initiatives, multiple surveys, interviews, workshops, you name it, to really kind of have a better understanding on this topic. And I think what we found is that in the beginning, it was considered that 1 in 8 people were neurodivergent. Then it went to 1 in 7, 1 in 6. Now it's at 1 in 5. I actually don't even think that's correct. I think this is far more prevalent than we believe. And what we've really come to realize is every single one of us is processing information differently. We are all neurodiverse. We just aren't all neurodivergent. And people that are neurodivergent tend to have even more challenges. So what might be annoying for someone who's neurotypical, it can be debilitating for someone that's neurodivergent.
So, you wanted to include this idea and your research in these spaces. What did it look like?
As a designer, I believe very, very strongly that the spaces that we are designing have a positive impact on everyone. But I then have to acknowledge that if I'm not doing it well, it could have a negative impact. And so we really leaned into the science of design, color theory, space, texture, materiality, volume. All of those things are having an impact on us. And anytime we do post-occupancy assessments, what we find are the biggest challenges are sound, temperature, and lighting, proximity to other people, a whole variety of things. But the built environment is absolutely having an impact on all of us. And so we wanted to make sure that we were designing it in a way that would be positive.
Well, you've identified 6 things that people do at work. Take us through those and explain how you design for them.
Yeah, so this is where all of the research that I've done in my 40 years as a designer and a workplace specialist have collided with this research on neurodiversity. And so what we know is that when people are in a shared work environment or even at home, there's 6 things that they typically are doing. There's 6 modalities of work. They're either concentrating, deep, intensive thinking. They're contemplating, which is almost the opposite. It's like you're freeing your mind up just to like wander, like when you're taking a walk or in a shower where the best ideas might pop into your head. The third is that communal or processing work, things you're doing in a shared setting together. You might be responding to emails and occasionally interacting with a colleague. The fourth is create, whether you're, a creative, groups coming together to create or an artist or whatever that might be. Then there's convening, meeting, and then the last is convivial, kind of socializing. And all 6 of those things we are doing to some percentage. So creating the right settings is key. And then we want to make sure that we have a hyper and a hypo setting of each one of those, and that we get that good mix in a space so that people can naturally navigate and find spaces that support what they're doing.
It's really interesting because we're talking about creating a space that works for people, but people working in that space don't always work for each other.
No, and they often need different things, right? So what you might need to thrive could drive me absolutely crazy. And so if you think about this, over the last 40 years, I think we've tried to create workspaces that support the average person doing the average thing. But who is that today? And what is that average thing? And I think we've oversimplified workplaces to a point that one size now misfits all, right? There's rows and rows of desks and benching and just endless rectangular tables shoved into conference rooms isn't meeting our needs anymore. And what we need to really focus on are what are people doing and what do they need? Believe me, I hear all the time the hatred of the open office, right? And there are a lot of open offices that are designed very poorly, but when they are designed well, they can be really effective because what we also found from our research is more people are bothered by being in enclosed spaces than by being in open spaces. People don't like being in a box, or they feel they don't get airflow, or they feel like they're in a fishbowl, or they can't move and fidget. But when we create open environments and we have all of those modalities of work, but then if we're just mixing them together, we've pureed the workplace and people can't find a distinct zone. So spatial sequencing and having distinct quiet areas and distinct areas for laughing and joking that are not next to each other is really pivotal in creating great spaces today.
Are these modifications we're talking about specifically for white collar offices?
No, we have imported these in healthcare, in airports, in our justice facilities, and nowhere do you probably need this more than in industrial spaces, right? That tend to have a lot of loud spaces, or in healthcare. People don't just go to offices, they go throughout the whole world. And so enabling people to be able to travel, because we don't just create a room, but it's the entire journey that we need to be thinking about. Our world is so chaotic for all of us. Anything that we can do to help reduce the stress, to help us be able to process and function holistically in those environments, can have positive impacts for every single one of us.
You've seen success with this so far. What's next for HOK? What are you doing with this information that you've gathered?
We're spreading the word, because all ships rise when the tide goes up, right? So we are talking as much as we can and sharing this information as much as possible. I'm at a conference right now talking about higher ed spaces and how do we design those to be more neuroinclusive. And we are continuing our research and thinking about how do we take this to the next level, and how do we help people assess what they already have. I mean, this isn't just about designing new spaces. And you said there's a lot of existing square footage out there. What can I do now in the offices that I already have that may not be functioning at a high level? How can I help improve those spaces? And so helping our clients just understand what it is we're talking about, and that there are absolutely steps that we can be taking, and that this truly is for the benefit of all. It's kind of our mission in life right now. We're on a campaign to spread that good word.
Kay Sargent is the Director of Thought Leadership Interiors at the architecture and design firm HOK. She's also the author of the book Designing Neuro-Inclusive Workplaces, Advancing Sensory Processing and Cognitive Well-Being in the Built Environment. Really appreciate your expertise and your time, Kay. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to Seattle Now. Today's episode was produced by Shane Mailing. It was edited by Caroline Chamberlain Gomez. Our production team also includes Brooklyn Jamerson Flowers, Vaughn Jones, Andy Hurst, and Paige Browning. Greg Kramer does our theme music. Seattle Now and KUOW Public Radio are members of the NPR network. I'm Patricia Murphy. See you soon.